We're continuing our series about the Old Testament stories of biblical heroes. As we learn more about these stories, there are two things that we want to remember. The first, that these heroes are not perfect or extraordinary by any means. Rather, they're people just like you and me who put their trust and faith in God. And second, that the real story of the Bible isn't about these heroes at all, but about God and all that God has done for us out of love for us. Though sometimes we have to dig a little bit to see exactly how God was working in these stories. Last week, we talked about Rahab and how, as people of faith, we are called to put that faith into action. This week, we are talking about Gideon. This story takes place in chapters 6 through 8 of the book of Judges, during one of the many times that the Israelites faced difficult situations because they had walked away from God. It's a pretty repetitive, common thing throughout the Bible. God's people turn their backs on God, things get really bad, God saves them, and they are grateful for a little while before they start the cycle all over again. In this particular scenario, the Israelites are suffering at the hands of the Midianites after worshiping other gods. But God hears the cry of his people and sends a messenger to a man named Gideon. God calls Gideon to go and rescue the Israelites from Midian. Gideon's pretty taken aback by this. What can one person from the smallest clan in Israel do against such a powerful people? God assures Gideon that his enemy will be delivered into his hands. And so Gideon goes into town and destroys the altar to Baal, who is the false god that they were worshiping. When the time comes for the battle to take place, Gideon asks God for a sign. Gideon said to God, "To see if you really intend to rescue Israel through me as you have declared, I'm putting a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, but the ground is dry, then I'll know that you're going to rescue Israel through me, as you've declared." When Gideon got up the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung out enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. Then Gideon said to God, "Don't be angry with me, but let me speak just one more time. Please let me just make one more test with the fleece. Now let only the fleece be dry, and let dew be all on the ground." And God did so that night. Only the fleece was dry, but there was dew on all the ground. Gideon then gathers together the Israelites for battle, an army 32,000 strong. But God tells Gideon to send people home so that God can prove that he is the one who will deliver Israel from the Midianites. Gideon obeys and sends home 22,000 soldiers, leaving him with a smaller but still formidable army of 10,000. But God tells Gideon that his army is still too big. God then commands Gideon to look at how the men drink from the water. If they drink by cupping their hands, he needed to send them home. But if they drank by lapping up the water with their tongue, they could stay. Gideon once again obeys, and this leaves him with a measly army of 300 soldiers. Facing insurmountable odds, but backed by a tiny army and an all-powerful God, Gideon leads the Israelites to victory over the Midianites. You would think that after this incredible display of God's power, that the people would correct their course and return to following God. But they don't. They look at Gideon as the source of their victory instead of God, and try to make Gideon their king. Gideon refuses, telling them that only God should rule over them. But that's not to say that Gideon got no reward. He asked everyone for all of the gold earrings they had looted from the Midianites as payment for leading them to victory. This is all well and good. It was standard at the time for soldiers to be paid out of what was taken from the losers in battle. But the problem is what Gideon did with this gold. He fashioned it all into this priestly vest and displayed it in his hometown. This vest became a source of idol worship for the people who lived there, and that, according to the Bible, became a trap for Gideon and his family. God had called Gideon to lead this conquest to bring God glory, and instead, Gideon ends up leading his people back to the idol worship that was the problem in the first place and away from God. It's easy to get caught up in our own success and to think that all of our accomplishments are due just to our abilities and talents. But it's important for us to remember that those abilities and talents are gifts from God, and that all good things come from God. The Israelites should have seen Gideon's victory as a shining example of how amazing God is and how much God loves them. When we glorify ourselves over God, we're not only getting the story wrong, we're missing out on seeing all of the awesome things that our God is doing in our lives. Bye, friends.